Like Jeff said, I am the owner of Lagan Music which is about 2 months old now, this company. Um, I started, this is in Chalfont, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. I grew up in Pennsylvania and I went to school for saxophone, and I did my undergrad at Penn State with Dr. David Stambler. I started as a music education student, and I think it was my third year I decided to add the performance degree so I could get a little more time specifically devoted to the study of the saxophone. And because, with the education degree, it was a lot of time on all of the instruments. Um, so I added the performance degree, which added a fifth year to my study. So in 5 years, I did the education and the performance degrees. I was ready to kind of take on this new challenge, start a new chapter. And frankly, it's something I was always very interested in and just didn't know how to get my hands on it. Um, During my master's, I started tinkering a little bit. Um, I started making palm key risers for myself and all of my friends that were there. And I actually started refacing mouthpieces too, because, um, the mouthpiece has so much to do with the instrument. I mean, Eric used to say the mouthpiece, he still says, I'm sure, the mouthpiece is the motor of the instrument. So the instrument is important, but everything at the top end of the instrument is of more importance. So I started refacing mouthpieces on my own. I mean, I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I talked to anyone that would listen to me, other mouthpiece refacers and mouthpiece makers. Um, and the reason I kind of started there was because the tools needed, at least to start working on mouthpieces, are it's a short list of tools and they're pretty affordable. Um, you just need some gauges and a small glass plate just made for mouthpiece work to measure the facing, which is, I mean, probably less than $50 total right there. And then you need a plate of glass and sandpaper. I mean, that's the um, the short list of things needed. So I bought those things, and so I was on to be able to start there as a full-time apprentice was just fantastic. Because I mean, the only way to start saxophone repair, the ways to get into it are to go to a repair school, which there are only a couple. So I had a unique opportunity to start as an apprentice, which is a paying job, which is fantastic. And my focus was 100% saxophones all day, every day. I mean, when I started working there, I was probably putting in, I was regularly putting in 50-hour work weeks on just the saxophone. And I would even go in on weekends off the clock to work on my own stuff and experiment. And I don't know, artistic, I'm much more geared towards the perfection and kind of the engineering side of things. Sure. So it was kind of an issue I battled in saxophone study, because I was finding that I'd go into the practice room and practice scales for 2 hours straight because I needed them to be perfect. And I wasn't getting on to the extra musical. Working with Jonathan Nickel and Joe Luloff during my time at Oklahoma and in Michigan, I really started to get that artistic side of things I was starting to figure it out. But my mind is so much more geared to technical perfection, that's one of the things I think really helps me as a saxophone repair person. Well, and I encourage people to just, whether it's during band rehearsal or something and the flutes are working and you're just sitting there, just like look at the instrument, observe the instrument, look around, because I can't tell you how many times I've had customers come from hours away because one needle spring popped loose. Nothing broke, nothing needed repair. It's just one spring came loose, or one screw came a little bit undone. The right hand of the saxophone, the lower stack, all of those keys have one long rod that goes through all the tubes and holds them together. And what happens a lot is that rod, the low D key is at the very end of that rod, your ring finger on the right hand. That rod unscrews itself, and then the whole D key just shifts slightly. and then it doesn't cover anymore. And people are like, I have a recital, I have to practice, my instrument does not work anymore. And it's literally a 10-second job of putting that screw back in, and then the D key lines up again and covers the tone hole perfectly. So little things like that, or even like a pivot screw, one of the short pointy screws that like the G key that holds in both ends. um, there's I've had a lot of people come in where like a pivot screw is about